Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to this special edition of the 51%. As the COP28 climate talks continue in Dubai, it seems only appropriate to go and talk to Dr Jane Goodall, a world-leading expert on chimpanzees who's currently visiting Paris. But first, let's take a look back at the life of this extraordinary woman who's become a global champion for environmental causes.
Tenderness and passion. That's what first united Jane Goodall and these chimpanzees. Before her, no human had got so close to them. Her incredible story began when she travelled to Kenya and met British paleontologist Louis Leakey at just 20 years old, before being sent to Gombe National Park in Tanzania. Her first contact with chimpanzees wasn't easy, but after 6 months, she built up some trust. Jane Goodall spent hours observing the primates. She noticed that one of them used branches to get termites out of the ground to eat. It's one of her most important discoveries.
When I first saw David Greybeard using and making tools, I was really excited because I knew that science believed that only humans used and made tools, man the tool maker. Everything changed with that one. It didn't really surprise me that chimps were capable of doing it, but it surprised me that I'd been the one to see it.
Anthropology later showed that chimpanzees have personalities and emotions. Scientists from across the world flooded to the research centre Jane Goodall founded in this jungle. Today, dozens of institutes across the world bear her name. A staunch defender of conservation and animal welfare, she also works with local communities who live close to animals and natural spaces. She's travelled tirelessly across the globe to champion her cause.
And I'm delighted to say that I'm now joined by Dr Jane Goodall. Dr Goodall, thank you very much for your time. COP28 climate talks are still underway in Dubai, but time is clearly running out for the planet. Do you think these gatherings offer any hope at all?
Well, if the politicians and business people followed up on the commitments they make at these huge international gatherings, the world would be in a much better state. But, you know, not one nation actually lived up to the commitments they made in the Paris Convention all those years ago. This time, I have a hope that it might be a bit better because the weather pattern change due to climate change is so extreme. And it's not only, for the first time, it's not only the poor countries that are suffering, but the flooding and the hurricanes and the fires are hitting the rich nations as well and causing a lot of economic damage. So I'm just hoping that COP28 will, some of the people anyway, will actually deliver on their promises.
What was your reaction to the news that the United Arab Emirates, which of course is one of the world's leading oil producers, was going to be this year's host?
I was shocked. It's very difficult because I think, you know, some people they have two sides to them, and maybe one side of this oil magnate really does care about the environment. But on the other hand, it just seems totally inappropriate for COP28 to be held in a country that depends on oil for its very existence.
Female representation at these high-level talks is traditionally low. At the same time, women and children are 14 times more likely to die in a natural disaster. Does this lack of representation frustrate you?
I think on the positive side, more and more women are beginning to appear in these conferences, and more Indigenous people. The big and the great are beginning to listen to young people because, after all, they're going to bear the brunt of all the harm that we've done to the planet before they were born. So, again, it's encouraging that more women and young people are involved.
Yet, have we passed the point of no return when it comes to climate change?
Some scientists say yes, but there are many who say no. I think we still have a window of time, but it's closing. And the only reason that aged almost 90, I'm still traveling 300 days around the world and I'll be attending the Economic World Forum, is because if we get together now, if enough of the big and the great and the ordinary citizens and the young people, if we all get together and take action now, we can at least slow down climate change and loss of biodiversity. And those two are so intricately linked that you can't really separate them. But the window is closing, and I don't know how big it is.
Let's come back now to your extraordinary career. How hard was it for you as a young woman working as a primatologist in Africa in an era where there were so few women scientists to begin with?
Well, I was lucky because there was nobody working in my field. So I didn't have to really compete. There was George Schaller with mountain gorillas, and there were 2 Americans down in South Africa. But, you know, nobody had been out and lived for several years with wild chimpanzees. Nobody. I was the first. And so, there was a big thing. Geographic made me into a cover girl, and there was a lot of flack, like, oh, she's only somebody because she's got good legs. And so if that was said today, women would go frantic and crazy. I just said, well, if it was my good legs that got me the money from Geographic, thank you, legs, you know. So it was a different era when I was there. Feminism hadn't really begun. And I think everybody was fascinated about me because, well, it was like Beauty and the Beast, you know. So I was really lucky, and I didn't have to compete with men at all.
How different is it now for women working in STEM, especially given that their numbers are still very, very low?
It's ever so much better. There are women now appearing actually in so many things that used to be just male. I think in primatology and fieldwork, women have always been pretty well represented, after me anyway. I think I did blaze a trail for a lot of women in that field.
I'm fascinated about empathy, which is still seen very much as a feminine value. When you did an interview for Time magazine in 2018, you were quoted that you can make observations that are absolutely scientifically accurate while even having empathy for the being you are studying. So my question to you is this: how do you combine empathy with scientific rigour?
Because science actually should be the reporting of fact. And the fact is that if you have empathy with your subject, you're very likely to understand much better why they do what they do. If you're just coldly objective, how can you ascribe any motivation to some of the things they do? It's only if you really understand them, and that gives you empathy. So for me, empathy has always been really, really important.
Do you think these days more and more scientists realise that?
I think absolutely. More scientists are showing empathy. I mean, you know, when I was told chimps have to have numbers, not names, and you can't talk about personality, mind, or emotion, that doesn't really exist anymore.
What have we failed to learn from chimpanzees? And I'm talking about us as humans, obviously.
One thing, they're very good at conflict resolution, and they don't like tension after a fight until it's made up. So, but it's always, you know, in a way in chimp society, might is right. So it's got to be the subordinate who goes up and begs for reassurance, even if it wasn't the subordinate's fault. But then when the hand is patted, everything's fine. And I think that we could learn something from that sometimes we may have to subdue what we know is right in order to maintain peace.
And in regards to that, so many of us as humans have seemingly lost our connection to nature and to the detriment of the planet. Is it too late for us to learn how to reconnect?
The Jane Goodall Institute back in 1991 began a program for young people that we call Roots and Shoots. And its main message is each one of us makes an impact every day. And what makes it different is that the young people choose. They choose their own project to make the world better, one for people, one for animals, one for the environment. And what began with 12 high school students in Tanzania is now in 70 countries. It has members from kindergarten, university, everything in between. And one of the things we are emphasizing is getting them out into nature. And if that's not possible, bringing nature into the classroom.
Finally, in your opinion, what are the commonalities between the battle to save the environment and the fight for women's rights?
I think the whole way that more and more people are looking at the world is that we've got to fight discrimination. We've got to fight for equality, equality between the sexes and between different areas of a society. And so the fight for equality for women and a better position for women in society is no different than the fight for giving nature a role in society and understanding the benefits of doing that. So it's really all interconnected. It's a fight for justice. Justice for people, justice for animals, justice for the environment.
Dr Goodall, it's been such an honour to meet you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's it for this special edition of the 51%. So until our next show, bye for now.